Alright, so what did I do today? Well, not much of anything really. A little bit productive. But a friend of mine told me that he was redoing an air exchanger unit in a rental that he's working on. And he knows I'm working on my RV. So he turned around and said, well, come and get the sheet metal because you can use it to patch your holes until you get your siding done. And I do have a bunch of them. Exhaust for the furnace, and here, and bathroom, and the floor, which is covered, and the fridge, and this skylight is going to get covered, and these windows are going to get covered, and I just got a bunch of tin to do some work so I have something to do tomorrow. Now this is just a temporary in case it rains because the whole box is going to get rebuilt, and so this is just to fix the holes. But I spent about 2.5 hours or so underneath the RV, and I think I'm just going to tear this whole box down and rebuild the floor. Because even though there's just spots, and it's basically only the 3 corners. The bathroom corner, which you've already seen, this corner needs about a 1 square foot, and this corner needs another 1 square foot. So I'm just going to take the whole thing down, take the floor right off, and build a new floor for 2 reasons. First and foremost, it's going to be way easier just to build a whole new floor than to try and pull everything up and fix and tack and then put down new. Just do the whole floor. I can rebuild the whole floor with insulation, cabling, wiring, steel on the bottom, undercoat, and the top in like an afternoon. I got my compound miter saw. You just get some 2x4, some plywood, some insulation, boom, and it's done. If I were to try and rebuild what I've got here on the floor, it would probably take me the better part of a whole week to patch. So I might as well just rebuild the whole thing. And the difference in cost to build a whole new floor as opposed to finish and rebuild this one, because the insulation's got to come out anyway, the wiring's got to be redone anyway. You know, this thing is 20, 80, 90, 100, 30 plus years old. So for the difference in cost of maybe $600 or $700, because you might as well just do the whole thing and then it's new, good, done. And at the same time, the second reason is I'll be able to do a whole better job underneath the RV on the frame, the drivetrain, the rear axle, the brake lines. It will just be way easier to refit and fix and reinstall the water, the propane, the heat exchangers, and all that stuff with the whole cab right off the whole frame. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to either lift this thing right up and off the frame and use it as a template, or I'm just going to demolish it and rebuild. We'll probably rebuild the new one first, then demolish this one, and then put the new one on, because I don't want the cab open to the elements while I'm working. But I figured out today that I'm going to rebuild the whole thing from the ground up, because it just makes sense, and the difference in cost is, for all intensive purposes, minimal. I was planning on putting $3,000, maybe $4,000 into the cab itself. And that $1,000 difference depends on things like gold-plated faucets, marble counters, good flooring, and just the accessories that go along with that. But for the sake of spending an extra maybe $2,000, $2,500 to just rebuild the whole thing, top to bottom, might as well do that. And it'll be a lot faster, because aside from all this is now coming out and going to Jose, And it took me 2 days to remove this. That's because I was being careful, didn't want to break nothing. But once I get this stuff out, it's going to Jose. I might as well just demolish the whole thing and start anew. So I'll be able to rust and prime and prep the frame properly with the cab off. Drop the drive axle, take everything apart, re-grease it, replace any gears that need to be done. I'm replacing the whole wheel hubs and brakes anyway, so it just makes my life that much easier just to take this whole thing off anyway. So that's what I figured out today. It took me all day to decide what I was going to do, because I spent 2 hours underneath and went, well, it's in good condition, but there's still a lot to work to be done. And I don't feel like spending any time on my back grinding and rust protecting and prepping. No, I'm not doing that. Whole thing's coming off. And it'll take way less time. And ultimately the question to myself was, what's your time worth? You know, I charge $60 an hour to do construction work up at Fanshawe Park, building decks and rebuilding campers. And if it's going to take me, let's just say, a good guess, a month and a half to rebuild this at $60 an hour, as opposed to just spending $2,000 and buying everything new, demolishing and rebuilding, it's well worth my time to spend the extra $2,000 to build instead of a month and a half to fix. So that's where my thought process was today. See ya!